course of the season, going to be talking all things Villa in terms of what's going on the field, what's going on off the field, historical stuff, future stuff, and basically everything Villa-wise that you need to know, we are going to be delivering. And so in that regard, the first thing we're going to talk about in this season is nothing to do with Villa, because you may remember by the time of this podcast going out, things happened in the summer. There was a tournament. England were involved. There were ups. There were downs. How's it for you, Euro 2020?
Do you know, mate, I tell you, first of all, it's nice to have a little bit of normality back in regards to actually being able to sit down and talk to you about the Villa. I know I could have picked up the phone, but I'm a bit lazy. But the Euros, yeah, it was a nice little football field, wasn't it? I think since that first big lockdown, that we had, and when the football season came back, it just feels like it's been a bit non-stop, really, football. And it's like you're a kid again, when football just consumed your life. And yeah, I mean the Euros were what they were. I don't know what you thought about them. I don't know how much you watched, but it was actually quite nice to start getting a little bit sick of watching football at times.
Yeah. I'd say in terms of the Euros, when it was announced a few years ago that it was going to be all over Europe, lots of host cities, didn't sound like the greatest idea, kind of in the world, kind of at the time. It's like, this is kind of a cheap gimmick. But obviously the pandemic, things happened. When it came to summer 2021, countries beginning to come out of lockdown, being able to spread it across Europe, getting it in lots of different places in front of lots of different people, it actually elevated it, I thought. And in terms of being able to, obviously some countries had more fans in the ground than others, but being able to get it across the European continent, I thought elevated it, and I thought it was a much better tournament for it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we only had the one game, didn't we, elsewhere, which was the Ukraine game in Italy. But seeing the different matches being played in Denmark, in Scotland, in England, in Italy and elsewhere, it made it feel a little bit more normal with international football. And whilst it was something different for such a big international competition, yeah, it definitely elevated it, And I think the other thing that elevated a bit was just the unity that England fans had. It really felt like a summer where we were going to do something. And I know every single one of us moaned about Gareth Southgate and his selections at some point, and we all wanted certain substitutions to be made or certain players to start. It just added to it. It was great to be able to debate football again. It really lifted us, I think, after such a horrible 18 months or however long it has been. It was the thing that we all needed.
Yeah, I think in terms of England's approach to the tournament, before it started, my fear was we'd be too negative. We had a lot of attacking players in the squad. The defence, probably not our strength, you would have thought on paper. So I thought if we're going to sit back, go a bit too defensive, we might cause problems for ourselves. During the group stage, it wasn't exactly free-flowing football, was it, from England? But we got through the group, we adapted the tactics for the opposition. And once we beat the Czechs, I would just resign myself. It's like, sit back. It's like, I've got to let Southgate do what he does, and we'll see what happens. And then, obviously, Germany, second round. It was on my birthday, so I had a very good time in terms of watching that game. I don't remember too much afterwards, but that was a momentous victory in English history. More for us than the Germany, because, well, they've won stuff and we haven't. But after that, it was like, we just got to see where this journey goes, where it ends. And I think in terms of 2018, we're almost like the Stoke of the tournament. We're quite set piece kind of driven.
Yeah, we were, yeah.
In this tournament, we adapted the tactics for different teams. Obviously, Germany, we switched to play three at the back. Ukraine, you mentioned. 4 at the back, and that was probably the most comprehensive England victory in a tournament for 25 years in terms of the domination. And we got to the final, didn't work out, to spoiler alert, but you can see the progress in this England team compared to where we were. When you're looking at 5 years ago, Iceland 2016, that was fairly grim.
You know, Iceland, I remember that quite vividly from the fact that I played for a football team at the time, and we did a bit of a sweepstake, and one of the lads went, "Oh, I've got Iceland, thanks for that." And it was like, mate, they will get to the quarterfinals quite comfortably. And we both wished that I'd been wrong, to be honest with you, at the time. But, you know, you're saying there, that game against Ukraine was a fantastic performance. It doesn't matter who the opposition was. You've got to beat who's in front of you at the end of the day. And the way we kept the ball, we just laid those little traps for them to pull them out of position through the relentless passing. You look at the game in when we got to the final as well, and we were knocking that ball around against Denmark for 2-3 minutes. That game management, how it was forward, back, I think there were about 52 passes at one point as well, which was phenomenal. But it was great to see England attacking more. It was great to see players who you thought, I'm not too sure about them, really drive the team forward. And I'm looking at Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips more than anybody else there, you know. I thought Declan Rice was very unfortunate to be taken off in the final. I'm still not sure why he was, whether he had a knock, because he was taking the game to Italy when he was on the ball. And looking at that final, it was the one time where we actually thought, we're going to sit back a little bit more, and it didn't quite work out for us in the end. Well, obviously it didn't work out for us, but it just felt a bit different to the other games.
Yeah, it was a bit like almost old England in terms of you get the lead and you just hold on for dear life. And Italy, you'd probably say objectively, best team in the tournament. So in terms of trying to hold on for like 120 minutes against the best team in the tournament,
yeah,
it was always going to be tricky. And we don't need to talk about penalties, but as we said, it was progress for England. Things are getting better from season to season, tournament to tournament. And that brings us quite nicely to what we're going to be talking about for the rest of this podcast. We're talking about Villa, what we think is going to happen this season.
Yeah.
And I think we'd mostly say that we're on an upward curve. You know, things are getting better from where they were before. So we're going to be talking about the season preview, where we think we're going to end up in the season, what's happened in the summer, kind of what we're thinking in terms of that, leading into that in terms of what we think the first choice 11 should be going into the first game of the season, who we need, what positions in the squad we need to improve, and kind of expectations really. And without wishing to prejudge what we're going to talk about, I'd probably say in terms of, especially, you know, to a few years ago, I think there's a general feeling of optimism in terms of looking into the new season.
I think so. I mean, I've been a Villa fan since really the days of Brian Little. The first game I can really remember going to was Ian Taylor's home debut, that 3-0 win against Chelsea, the bullet header in front of the whole end, you know, and around those times, I mean, I know we didn't do too great that season, but we built on that with the AST on the front of our shirts, you know, the Reebok home kits, the Draper signing, Savo Milosevic, Gareth Southgate, again, coming around full circle. And we were a top 6 team, we were a top 4 team. We were a team who Alex Ferguson would tip as someone who could challenge at the right end of the table. And it was the same under Gregory. David O'Leary wasn't amazing, was he? You know, I mean, bottom 3 at Christmas that first season, but then we built on it. And then we had the Taylor year, half a year, whatever it was, which obviously wasn't as good as the first time round. And then probably the most excited I've ever been as a Villa fan, and I'd say probably most people who are in their mid-30s, was when O'Neill joined. Martin O'Neill brought with him this euphoria, and he just made us believe again. That first season, okay, we finished 11th, but he started laying the foundations with the likes of Carew and Ashley Young joining. And there was just a positive buzz at that time. And ever since then, up until Dino, we didn't really have anything from when he left. I think the only other person I liked as a manager, and you're going to chuckle, Tim Sherwood. Absolutely loved him. He came in, he had all the swagger of Liam Gallagher. You know, that first season, he kept us up quite comfortably in the end when he took over and we were second from bottom. He got us to a cup final, but then he just went all bad. At least he beat the Blues in the second season. You know, that's probably the best thing you can say about that season. And then Dino's come in and he's been golden for us, really.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Villa history over the last few years, the managers you mentioned, I think the thing with O'Neill was didn't really appreciate what you had until it's gone. And there was a lot of grumblings, I think, from Villa fans by the end of O'Neill. And the way he left, some Villa fans still blame him. They don't forgive him. He was sacked, really. I mean, he went to an employment tribunal and won. So that's kind of one of the, you know, in terms of football, fans thinking, oh, no, you never leave under any circumstance, you know, in terms of even if you're being waterboarded, when you go into the training ground, you still got to turn up. Whereas things you wouldn't put up with in your own job, kind of on a day-to-day basis, because it's football, you expect to take. And you remember kind of afterwards, Julio was next, and you think, God, that was terrible, you know, in terms of kind of that run. That was brilliant, really, compared to what came after. And, you know, in terms of, you mentioned Sherwood, didn't last a year, really, in terms of that. But
no.
Compared to what was going on before, you know, takes over from Lambert, we would have gone down under Lambert. I don't think there's any doubt that at all. We scored like 12 goals or something stupid before he got sacked, and we lost away at Hull, and it was absolutely dreadful. And sometimes you just need a contrast, somebody a bit different. And, you know, in terms of some of the best atmospheres I've been at Villa Park, we're under Sherwood. That cup quarter final when we played West Brom. Unbelievable atmosphere. I mean, it got better after we were in front, but, you know, in terms of you got those memories. And probably in terms of top 5 football games I've ever been to, Villa Liverpool semi-final of the FA Cup, unbelievable day. And we'll probably touch upon that more later on. But Sherwood was responsible kind of for those games, for those memories. Yeah, the final we won't talk about, and it kind of ended up not going particularly well afterwards. But things got a lot worse, kind of a lot quick after Sherwood left, and, you know, we could have a whole fun debate about what happened. You know, Remy Gard came in after. Was it entirely his fault? I don't think it was entirely his fault. Wrong choice at the wrong time. But we were outside the Premier League for a few years, shall we say. And it was almost in terms of, even the season we went up, we weren't really doing very well kind of in the season we got promoted. I mean, I remember losing at home to West Brom in mid-February, bringing it back to West Brom. Mid-table, nothing really happening, really. And coming on to it, the thing that really changed our season, I mean, we played Derby, start of March.
Yeah.
Won 4-0. Lambert, you know, he's a great new manager. He's brilliant. Derby were doing better than us. Win out of nowhere. Then Blues, next game. Blues were above us, I think. And, you know, in terms of, you know, talk about different mentalities of fans, different expectations, but they were doing better than us in the league at the time. And they had a shot at the playoffs. I mean, I think there were some financial irregularities that came afterwards that got them deducted points.
Yeah.
But they were certainly in the better form. And talk about moments, and we'll probably touch upon it later on. As soon as that fan went on the pitch for Blues, it's like, we're going to win this game.
Yeah.
And then that was number 2 out of number 10 in terms of 10-match unbeaten run, 10 wins in a row, most in Villa's history, got us into the playoffs. And we taking it from there, really. I mean, the first season in the Premier League was dicey, I think we can say.
It was a bit, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, second season obviously had a great start. Unfortunately, I think COVID caused a bit of an issue when, we lost that momentum in terms of having to cancel games. But yeah, I think it's the first time in a long time looking forward to the following season thinking we're going to do better than next year. We've actually got a really exciting team. We got an owner with or owners with a bit of money. We're looking in terms of investing long term in the club, not necessarily just on the field. Talk about training ground, a stadium. So it's an exciting time to be a Villa fan, I think. And it's not at the O'Neill level yet. When we were looking for Champions League, we were looking for Europe. I mean, we'll talk about the season preview, whether we think Europe is a realistic option. But it's exciting to be a Villa fan, and in terms of even under O'Neill, we were labelled negative, boring by a lot of outside influences. Nobody really gave us much credit, even though we probably gave the entire England midfield probably at one point.
Yeah, I think
but,
we did, yeah.
But now, I think we've somehow got into a position of kind of, not the neutral's favourite maybe, that's exaggerating a bit, but most people are thinking, yeah, I'd like to watch this Villa team. And which is great when you're a fan of it and you want to watch them every week.
Definitely. I mean, you say that about the neutral. I remember Ian Wright on Match of the Day last season saying if he could play for any team at the moment, it would be Villa. They're the cool cat walking down the street who you think, wow, look at them. And we have been exciting for quite a while. You say about when Dino came in, and then, we did have a bit of a lull under him, which coincided with a certain someone not being available, and then him coming back was a catalyst. And I think a lot of fans sometimes forget that in that time, we won 12 out of 15 games. Forget the 10 on the trot, because I know we lost to Leeds. No, we drew with Leeds, didn't we? We lost to Norwich, and we lost that one West Brom game, but we beat West Brom as well in the semi-finals, and then we beat Derby. And then you come into the Premier League, and let's be honest, if the Premier League hadn't have been disrupted, we probably would have gone down. It did a lot for us. A few neutral fans have mentioned something about technology as well when we played Sheffield United, but I've got no idea what they're going on about. No. It seems to be a trump card, doesn't it, nowadays? But now it is great. And even last season, when we were signing players, I didn't really get excited about any of those signings. I mean, probably Martinez I did, because it was finally we've got a goalkeeper who's a good goalkeeper, considering Tom Heaton's out. Matty Cash comes in and you think, yeah, mate, it's a championship player. Bertrand Traore comes in, or it's a Chelsea reject who's done okay at Ajax, who's done okay at Lyon. Even Ollie Watkins, I'll be honest with you, I had my doubts. I thought, is he really going to do it in the Premier League? Thank you for proving me wrong, Ollie. You're a quality player, and even getting into that England squad, and being considered for the Euros, what an achievement. And you come to this season, and I am genuinely excited about at least one, maybe two of the signings that we've made. It probably doesn't sound like a lot, but I think the last time there was any real excitement over signings that we made, actual oh my god type of signing, probably Darren Bent. There may have been people since then, but none spring to mind. Darren Bent, when we brought him, it was like, oh my god, I can't believe we've got this player in a Villa shirt now.
Yeah, it's like with Ben, we just put the money on the table. It's like, yeah, we'll take it from here. We're going to deal with that. And in terms of when we got promoted to the Premier League, it was a bit like an episode of Supermarket Sweep. We had the trolley and we were just throwing everything in. We were going for the inflatable guitar, kind of going for the specials, kind of throwing it in. Last season, it was a bit more targeted in terms of the players we were going for, and pretty much it was a really good success rate in terms of the players that we brought in.
Yeah.
This season, similar again, in terms of evolution rather than revolution. And that kind of base level, really, of the starting 11 that we'll come on to. We've kind of got a solid set, and in terms of obviously Martinez coming in, it's always good trolling Arsenal, which we've continued to do kind of for the last year. So I'm always enjoying that. And, you know, in terms of, you're looking a few years ago, we weren't even in the same league as Arsenal, let alone in terms of buying their players. And you've got Arsenal fans who are like, man, what did we get rid of Martinez for? Keeping Leno? You know, that's like really, really stupid, you know, in terms of the way they're looking at it. And, you know, obviously goalies can play for a long time, and we've picked him up like 20 million, something like that, in terms of the fee. He's going to be our first choice goalie for years, unless somebody comes in with some really stupid money. And there's no example of people coming in with stupid money for our players. But, you know, we've got that kind of, that foundation. And when you kind of, you're not looking over your shoulder, which we, you know, the first season we came up, it was, I agree, I think we would have gone bottom if it wouldn't have been for the break, shall we say, in terms of that. And we just about managed to turn it around kind of at the end of the season. And you're looking in terms of, you know, last game of the season, staying up, memories, watching that game. For me, that's one of, you know, kind of one of those memories, iconic moments you're going to have in your list of, you know, top 5, top 10 moments, that goal going in the bottom corner. And we'll probably talk about that in a bit more detail kind of later on. But without that, you don't have what happens last season. You don't have what happens this season. And in terms of the preview of the season, I'd say we're probably going to be doing or expecting to do better than a few teams who are in the league before us, or more consistently, because of our recruitment. Helps we've got owners with money, obviously. But yeah, I think in terms of, it is not looking over the shoulder, I'd say. And I think we're, you know, we don't know how things are going to go in terms of the season, how much of an impact the big departure will come on to. But yeah, I don't think it's a one-man team, really, in terms of, we're going down, you know, without this player, you know, we've got no chance at all. So I suppose in terms of the preview, how do you think we're going to do? Where do you think we're going to come in the league?
I think we're going to do rather well this season. You know, I'll be honest with you, I'll probably do about 6 or 7 or 20 Premier League predictors during the course of the season anyway. And I did one last night, and I looked at where will everybody finish in the season. And without wanting to go into too much detail about other teams, I looked at some of them and I thought, you know, you're going to struggle a little bit because you've got Europe for the first time in a long time, or your squads aren't quite up to it. And I'm looking at a team like West Ham, and it could come back to bite me on the bottom, but I don't think West Ham will do as well this season because I can't really think of anybody that they've signed. I mean, I might be being very naive here, but do they have a squad? Really, a good squad of players? But anyway, I'm digressing from what you've asked. I think we get 7th, and I think we get into that new UEFA Confederation or whatever competition it is. And I think that has to be the target. We have to be aiming for Europe, because if we're not, you've got the likes of Martinez, whose value and stock has increased. You've got other teams who are going to be looking at us and looking at our players and thinking, do you know what? They can perform. You look at, for example, a Man City. I hate to use them as an example because we know how much they like buying our players. But if they've got a Kyle Walker on the decline, one of your next best right backs that aren't in the Sky 6 is a Matty Cash. And he's a similar type of player as well. So we've got to start getting into Europe, or at least challenging for it, but really getting into it as a minimum, to then be able to go and buy even more players, better players, and creating a squad of players where you think, actually, I don't know who's going to start today, because I still think we've got a few players who it's sort of, you'd expect them to be on the pitch for the first whistle of every game. But yeah, 7th, I think, with the squad that we've got, and not just with the new signings, but with the established Premier League players now, because they are established. And the youngsters. We've got so many youngsters who look like phenomenal talents. Forget the ones who have gone out on loan, because I'm sure they're going to do bits wherever they are. You've still got Philogence Bidace, and you've still got Chukwuemeka. Even Brad Young looks good as well, you know. He's got this little arrogance about him, you know. Seventh, and I'm quite confident that we'll finish seventh, you know. Seventh.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the academy, I think that's a whole potential episode in itself, seeing how we've changed our approach over the last few years. Linked with the new owners as well. We're going targeting players mainly from leagues below us, but, you know, kind of their premium players, which is one of the things fans want, is they want young players coming through into the first team. So we've got that pathway, hopefully, and we got some very good young players coming through. In terms of my prediction of where we're going to come, I haven't got as quite as high as 7th. Obviously, I'm very happy to be proved wrong. I think we're in that 9th to 11th bracket, is my feeling. But even if we come 11th again, which is where we came last season, that's going to feel like a few places higher, because kind of the lazy narrative, if you can put it like that, outside Villa Park is, oh, you haven't got Grealish anymore. So it's a terrible team. You look in terms of the stats last year when Grealish didn't play, I think we won like 2 maybe, like out of 12 or something. Not particularly great. So the feeling is, you got no Grealish, you're falling off a cliff, you know, you're near the bottom, kind of battling relegation, kind of as it were. But I don't think it's going to be like that, and I think we're going to have to play in a different way. See, if you listen to the interview that Perslow gave after we sold Grealish, him cutting his promo in terms of how we knew this was happening all along, which, well, we can let others judge that. But we have tried to buy players in the summer, build a system in the summer that isn't entirely reliant on one player, which at points last year, it looked like it was. And I think we're going to be a better team than we were last year. Obviously, you can't replace a once-in-a-generational talent. But I think we're going to do better than what people think we're going to do. I think it's going to be a team that the fans are going to get behind more. That we're not behind the team at all, but, you know, in terms of, I think there's more of a feeling. You got to pull together now, you know, like your main man's gone, and we've got a few players coming into the team who weren't there last year, who you may need to hit the ground running. And, you know, we'll come on to the first few games of the season preview later on, but they're a good few games to kind of get people melded into the team. So I think we are going to surprise people in terms of if they think, oh yeah, we're no good, and, you know, it's just going to be like it was in the first season, battling relegation. In terms of, you're looking in terms of, I think the reasons were given why Grealish was going is we were 3 years away, you know, kind of from challenging for the Champions League, you know, really going for the league. I'd probably agree. I think we are a few years away. But linking on in terms of who we expect the first choice 11 to be on the opening day of the season, or who the first choice 11 if everybody was fit, I do think our first choice 11, I would put it higher in 11th. You mentioned come 7th. I would put it top 7 in terms of that 1 to 11. Although you can't have numbers 1 to 11 anymore because everybody wants their own squad numbers. But yeah, in terms of our top team, I think it, as demonstrated last season, I think it gives anybody a game.
I think so. I think, you know, as well, you look at, for example, our 2 strikers, and you look at 2 strikers for any team in the Premier League, whether they play 1 up top and they have a backup striker, or whether they go for 2 up top. And I'm confident in saying that Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings would be in the top 6 of the best duo striker-wise. Who do I think have got better strike partnerships than us, or a better 2? When you really think, is that person a striker, or are they a winger or an attacker? You know, I'd probably make an argument, and it won't please many fans. Lacazette and Aubameyang are probably better than those two. Apart from that, I'm not really too sure who else there is. Man City, you got one striker. You know, Man United have got Cavani. If you add Rashford into it or Martial, yeah, probably. Chelsea, if they get Lukaku, then yeah, you know, Timo Werner didn't do too badly for them really. But anyway, I'm talking about teams that I don't really care about. Us though, this season, definitely, we do seem to be stronger than we were last year. That with Grealish leaving isn't exactly the end of the world for us. Whilst it's not nice, and there's a lot of Villa fans who feel the pain of having that, you know, that hero put on his cape for the last time and fly away somewhere different. It doesn't feel like, oh, okay, well, now we're going down. Yeah, to the outside world looking in, they are thinking, you ain't got Grealish anymore, mate. You are going to be battling relegation. From the inside looking out, that's not the case at all. As you've said, this starting 11 is probably the strongest starting 11 that we've had for a long time in a league. And you look at the players that we brought in now. I mean, Ashley Young, he's going to offer something. He might not offer everything that he did before, but Ashley Young has left the Villa and become a winner. You know, winning the league in Italy, winning it with Man United, winning numerous cups with Manchester United. You've got Emiliano Buendia, who, all right, he's been playing in the Championship, but he was quality for Norwich last year, and he got into that Argentina squad and was considered for the Copa America, where Argentina obviously did brilliantly in. On top of that, you've got your Leon Bailey from clips, and I appreciate it's YouTube. Leon Bailey looks like an absolute baller.
Yep. Linked with Champions League teams a few years ago.
Well, yeah, you know, for more money than what we paid for him, you've got Twanzebe, who's come back, where it sounds like he really enjoyed his time at the Villa previously. He's going to add something. What's stopping him from getting into that back two if Konsa or Mings have a bit of a dip in form? He can play DM, he can play right back as well. And in the player who's got me really excited is Danny Ings. And he's got me excited because he's the sort of football manager FIFA signing that you'd make where you think, I can sign anybody, I've got this money, I want a proven goal scorer. He would not have been out of place at Man City if they can't get Kane. He wouldn't have been out of place at Tottenham if they sell Kane. He's going to score goals anywhere. You put him in any team and he will score goals for you. And the fact that we've shown the ambition to get Johan Langer to call up Southampton and go, all right, lads, just give us your bank details. I'm sending 30 million your way. Pop Danny in a car and tell him to come to Bodymore. It's exciting. And you've got this player who can score goals. Watkins showed that he can score goals as well. Hopefully he doesn't have that second season syndrome where he tails off a bit. I don't think he will. I really don't. He's too intelligent with his runs and that. And you see the little clips in training from Danny Ings where he scores that no-look goal from Bertie's no-look pass. And you just feel like you've got a player again who can score from anywhere. He reminds me a bit of, and he might not have scored too many goals when he played for us, but he reminds me a bit of like a Kevin Phillips, someone who's just a natural goal scorer. And his goals and Watkins' goals, if they can get 15 to 20 each, we're going to have a great season.
Yeah, I think if they're getting 20 each, you're looking at Europe absolute minimum in terms of 7th. You mentioned earlier in terms of the signing of Darren Bent, and when that went through, it's like, how have we got him?
Yeah.
I'm struggling to remember a player who we signed since Darren Bent that had that reaction. Because I remember when it was announced that we were signing Ings, I remember you messaged me and I was thinking, oh, this, it's a rumour, or, somebody's saying this is going to happen. And then I went online and he's holding the shirt and it's like,
Yeah.
How the hell did that happen? It's like a real turns out absolutely nowhere. I mean, maybe the moral is you troll them about buying another player and then, slip in an offer for somebody else kind of on the down low. But yeah, I mean, that was a real kind of statement signing, really, I think, for Ings, in terms of, as you said, in terms of not out of place in one of the top teams in the league. Goal scoring record, very good. Southampton had struggles in the second half of the season, so 14 goals last year, that's not bad for a team in the bottom half.
No, and he started really well for him, and then he started getting niggles, didn't he? Which is probably where Southampton had trailed off that little bit. But as you say, it was so out of the blue. I'm lost for words with the signing of him. I know it's not Lionel Messi joining, but Danny Ings in a Villa shirt with the right supply line. All right, we don't have Jack to do it anymore, but we've Bundia, with Bailey, El Ghazi, Cash, Target, Ashley Young. It doesn't really matter who. He will get goals for us, and those goals, I think, will help us hit that 7th position. I'd be disappointed if we weren't top half. I'd be happy with top half, but I'm quite confident we'll get that 7th.
I mean, for Danny Ings to get 20 goals, he needs to get in the team. So we're going to talk about the team now in terms of who you think the first choice 11 should be, not necessarily what we think Dean Smith is going to pick. So we're looking in terms of back 4, back 5, depending on what formation you're going to play.
Yeah.
Who would your first choice be? Goalkeeper, defence?
I think you've got to go with the first choice from last season, really. You've got Emi Martinez in goal. He's, dare I say it, I might get pelters for it. He's a world-class goalkeeper, and I think he's gone and proved that because he's won trophies. He's won the FA Cup, the Community Shield, and he's then gone and won the Copa America. And we've had discussions about world-class players before, and we've said world-class players are players who win trophies regularly. You can be a very good player in a team. Harry Kane is a very good player, but until he starts winning trophies, can you deem him as world-class? He's England's best, but is he world-class? It's a contentious subject. Martinez is a world-class goalkeeper. I do worry about our second choice keeper. Jed Steer did well for us in the Championship, but he looked like he got a bit nervous when we were in those playoffs and in the playoff final. Right back, I'm not concerned about at all. Matty Cash, absolutely fantastic piece of business, and if he doesn't let Jack know that he's there when they meet up again, I'd be surprised. I mean, there's that clip of the tackle that he does for Forest against West Brom where he sends a West Brom player hurtling down the pitch.
Yep. He's just going to be in the tunnel where Crash is going to let him know he's around.
Definitely. And, he's not everybody's favourite player. I like Gilbert. I think Gilbert's a strong enough backup right back. I think you go with Konsa and Mings. Tyrone Mings has got a mistake in him. He does. Every football player's got a mistake in him. Tyrone Mings are highlighted a bit more because he makes them once every 2 or 3 games. But what a leader he is. And you saw that when we played Palace. We lost 3-2. No talking. He's there. He's talking to everyone. He's got expectations. He, in many ways, is the voice of a nation, with how he talks about things outside of football as well. If he doesn't wear the armband next season for us, I'd be surprised. I'd probably be a little bit disappointed. I think he deserves it. Ezri Konsa is a phenomenal talent as well, who will only get better and could play at the highest level, and hopefully that will be in our claret and blue. Then you've got Courtney Howes. I didn't think he was Premier League standard, but you look at how comfortable he was when he came into the team last year. His range of passing as well. He's a great defender. Twan Zabi, we know what he brings to the table. We know what an athlete he is, and he's played games for Man United in in the Premier League and in big competitions. If they trust him, we'd be very naive not to. And then left back, Matty Targett, I didn't think much of him when we signed him. I didn't think much of him before the first lockdown, but since then, what a player, and deservedly getting the award that he did last season. I think we need another left back as backup for him. I know Ashley Young's been brought in there, but secretly, don't all Villa fans want to see Ashley Young tearing it down the wing, doing what he did before that goal against Birmingham when we beat them 5-1 and he skinned those two players with a drop of the shoulder. We want that Ashley Young back, really.
Yeah, I'd say probably overall, in terms of the back five, I think the back five picks itself. In the same five players that you said have been grieving in terms of Martinez, he's really gone up a level playing regular football for Villa. As with you, I'm a bit concerned about the backup. It's a difficult sell in terms of trying to get a backup keeper to join the club, because you basically got to say you're not being first choice unless the guy gets injured, and that can be tricky. We've got hopefully a couple of youth goalies who might be able to fill the bench, but yeah, that's a bit difficult. So I think we've almost been a victim of our own success in terms of such a good signing that even in a season that's gone, goalies are going to look at that and go, nah, I got no chance. I'm going to beat Martinez. As you said, in terms of fullbacks, Targett first choice, left back, I think I agree. He's definitely come on in terms of the last 18 months. Young has technically been brought in to play left back. I agree with you. I wouldn't really want him playing left back, to be honest. I'm hoping he's been brought in more for his experience around the training ground, with the younger players. Yeah. I think if he started more than 10 games in the league, something's maybe gone a bit wrong. Somebody's got injured or loss of form. But obviously a good player to have around the squad, 1 year deal. We're not paying any money for him in terms of a transfer fee. Almost a shot to nothing, really. And there are a few other clubs who came in for him. I think Burnley thought they had him, so, kind of swooping in there as well. And it might be a nice redemption story for Young, because he deservedly, undeservedly, depending on where you look at it, he got a bit of stick when he came back and when he was playing for Man United. Yeah. So, to round that circle, that'd be nice. Right back, Cash. We've got nobody else really on the same level. He dipped a little in the second half of the season. Tendency to give away penalties, I think, a bit too much, but obviously, it's, a solid player. You got Gilbert. I like Gilbert, as I said, to be fair. I remember League Cup semi-final, the away leg, Leicester scoring, jumping up and down.
Yep.
Smith didn't seem to fancy him, and it didn't seem to be related to what happened on the field. I mean, I think he played away at Southampton in the league, and I was there, we were fucking dreadful. I was there, we were terrible in terms of that. We lost 2-0, we were useless. And that seems to be the end of it, kind of, Gilbert. But I think the talent's there. Obviously, then you got centre-backs, Mings, Konza. Controversial opinion, I think Konza's a better centre-back than Mings in terms of ability. But you were mentioning in terms of the leadership that Mings brings and, kind of off the field. And England level as well. I think that is why you would play Mings, or you want him as part of a two with Konza. But that's really quite exciting in terms of you got the technical ability and you got the leadership ability, and that's kind of that combination in terms of a centre-back partnership. That's what you want. And, Konza, his time will come in terms of England. I would be surprised if he's not in an England squad before the next World Cup in 2022. We've got Howells, good backup. Twanzebe, decent backup. So I think we're kind of relatively well set, really, in terms of the back five. I think we need more depth at fullback. That'd be my thing. I think we need another left back, definitely. If Smith doesn't fancy Gilbert, we need another right back. Yeah. If he fancies Gilbert, that's a solid two. I think in terms of him and Cash, if we can get a goalie, that would help. But I think goalie is going to be tricky in terms of bringing in. But we'll see where we go. We got the back four. We got the back five set with the goalie as well. we might have a bit of fun in games in terms of the formation going forwards.
Mm.
But in terms of your midfield, including defensive midfield, attacking midfield, wingers, who are you playing?
See, I've been deliberating a bit over what my formation would be, and it seems today that they've gone for a 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2. Sort of, I think there's going to be a lot of fluidity up front with those front four players. So I'm going to say who my two central midfielders will be next, if you don't mind. And the one player who springs to mind who has to really be in there for me is John McGinn. And I know that McGinn had that dip in form, and a lot of it was probably around about the time that he injured himself when he was a bit over-exuberant against Southampton and did his ligaments in. And he came back and he wasn't quite fit. It took him a while to really get back into the swing of things. But I thought he was decent last season. I thought he played well. He's not going to score you loads of goals a season. You probably expect 5 or 6 from him. But he brings something in regards to his energy. He's relentless. He never gives up. You'll see him getting back and dogging attackers. You'll see him making those late runs into the box, such as he did against Arsenal in that first season, when we lost 3-2 and scored. The goal he scored against Tottenham away when he was getting forward. He's a different type of leader. He could easily be the captain because he leads by example in the way that he plays. The next central midfield position is a bit harder and maybe a bit of a strange one as to who I'm going to say should be playing alongside McGinn. But I think Morgan Sanson should be there. And I know we haven't really seen a lot of him. It was a shame for him. He's had to get used to it. But just before he got injured, and particularly in the game where he got injured, I started to think, yeah, you can see why we brought him in. He's neat and tidy on the ball. He'll get back. He'll put a tackle in. I think it was Arsenal, wasn't it, when we beat them 1-0 that he got injured. And he's running back, throwing slide tackles in, getting forward and looking quite dangerous with his link-up, trying to break into the box. He looked like an 8. He looked like a right-footed McGinn without the bum in some ways. And I think because of that, they'll be able to build an understanding where one goes, one sits, and they'll both drop deep. They're central midfielders. We don't need 2 defensive midfielders. We need 2 central midfielders. Obviously, they're going to have to defend at some point, but you don't need to be playing a 5-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-2-2 with 2 defensive midfielders. You need central midfielders who are James Milner type players. I'm not saying either of them are as good or as influential as Milner when he was at us, or that they're not, but they've got to be in that sort of a mould. It's a shame for someone like Nakamba, who has really come on this last season. I mean, his win percentage and goals against when he was on the pitch last year was ridiculous.
Probably couldn't have got any lower based on the first season.
No, well, probably not. And you see people like Ashley Preece, the Mail writer, saying that Nakamba's probably been his player of pre-season. He just needs to work on his passing and his attacking input. I don't think he's ever had a shot on target for us. And then you've got Dougie. Dougie's a great player. He can score a belter. He pops up to score. He's a deep-lying playmaker, if you want to go into football manager terms. He sits just behind the central midfielders and he'll play those quarterback passes. But he's not really a DLP, is he? He's going to be better suited to a different midfield role. Maybe he can play that 8, get forward and get back. Will he be disciplined enough to do it? I think it's a big season for him. I don't think that means that we will be looking to sell him at any point soon, because he's going to be, or he's got the potential to be a great player. I know there's the links with Roma and whatnot, but just at the moment, he gets picked by Sanson. But he'd be my first choice ahead of Nakamba if we were just playing 2.
Yeah, I think in terms of that midfield 2, midfield 3, talked about the Euros earlier. McGinn obviously plays a lot further forward for Scotland than he does for Villa, especially over the last season. When McGinn came in, he was playing in the Scotland role. It was like that. He's moved back, and so it can come as a bit of surprise to the neutral. Oh, McGinn doesn't score any goals for Villa like last season. I think he scored against Liverpool, and that's basically it in terms of the Premier League. But that's because he plays a completely different role, and he's that terrier kind of instead. Regardless of where he's playing on the field, he is that terrier. You mentioned Southampton where he got injured. That got him into trouble because he was just, I was at the game and I was just stupid. I don't think there's any other way of putting it. But him kind of in that deeper role, he's got something about him going forward. So he's got that best of both worlds, and I think that's a good fit for him in the Villa team. In terms of the Luis Sanson debate, I probably would put Luis ahead of Sanson. Luis, in terms of his first season at Villa, it was 2 moments of greatness. Then you turn it around, he's passed the ball across the penalty box and you've conceded a goal. Yeah. And looking in terms of last season, still giving away stupid free kicks, stupid penalties on occasion, but he was definitely better last season than he was the season before, which comes with experience, comes with playing more games. And I think Villa are a little surprised that there hasn't been more interest in him this summer. I mean, Roma have been linked more recently. Now, the Xhaka deal hasn't come through. I mean, I'd say you'd rather have Luis than Xhaka, obviously. But if we keep him this season, you mentioned it's going to be a big season, that third season starting for a big team or a team in the Premier League. This is going to be in a make or break. It's going to be linked with where Villa come in the table, whether it's a push towards Europe. But I would play 2 in midfield, kind of more defensively, and I'd play Luis and McGinn. You mentioned Sanson. I remember being really excited when he joined because you'd heard all the hype. It's like, that's a really great deal, and he'd been linked with other teams previously for a lot more money. It's difficult joining a team halfway through the season. You haven't had the pre-season. You're having to catch up from a long way behind. Didn't quite kick off, I don't think, for Villa. Then he got injured. That was the end of that. Hopefully the pre-season, a full pre-season, he's going to be able to add a bit more, because I remember wanting him to be really, really good and watching him going, oh, he's done that pass. Oh, yeah, brilliant. And that was kind of it, during for a game. So hopefully more time to settle in the country as well. That's a big factor. In terms of the players, getting used to the system. Hopefully it's going to be a big season because we're going to need more of an in-depth squad, and him being able to step up is going to be a factor in terms of how Villa progress in terms of the season. You mentioned Nakamba. He was better, I think, last season, obviously. In terms of, I think it was because he didn't have to play every week. I think that helped. Being able to dip in, as he said, his attacking contribution, there isn't really much. But if you've got him playing a game, if you've got him playing alongside somebody who's more attacking, a McGinn or even a Luis or even a Sanson, you don't need him to. So that kind of is a 4 in terms of centre midfield. It's not bad. I think we probably do have another in terms of that centre midfield, really just to get that competition. But if you're going to say in terms of that opening day of the season, Luis and McGinn are going to start, or Sanson and McGinn, I don't think that's terrible. I think that's a decent midfield. I think it's better than quite a few midfielders in the league in terms of that 2 kind of in the centre of the park.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. There's obviously the one player who's really been linked with us, and I'm sure that we'll both discuss him, who could come into that centre midfield that would get Villa fans salivating. But I wouldn't be disappointed at all if it was any 2 of those 4 players that started. And, as well, a mention to Ramsey. Young Jacob Ramsey came in. He didn't disgrace himself at all last season. He did quite well. And then you've got his brother, Aaron Ramsey, who's looked decent in pre-season. Okay, it's teams who have just got promoted to Serie A, or it's Warsaw You've got to start somewhere at the end of the day. But no, that centre midfield, I'm quite happy with that. So I know you were leading on this, but where do you go in front of those other two? What do you do with the other 4 positions?
So I think in terms of the way I'd play 2 deep, 3 attacking, and then 1 up front. And I think 2 of the positions almost pick themselves. The first, you'd probably say in terms of our big signing for the summer, Buenda, I think he has to start. You can make an argument about whether he's playing coming in from the wings or in that number 10 role. I'd play him number 10, to be honest. I'd get him in the centre so he's able to dictate play. He can kind of drift where he needs to. Almost like the number 10 who he's coming in to replace. So I think getting him on the ball, I mean, a very good season for Norwich last season. We've put the money down for him. We'll see how he gets on. I mean, in terms of, obviously, I think Norwich would rather he stayed in terms of when he went, but they got a good price. We've got a good player. I think he's first choice in terms of that role. In terms of the 2 players coming off the wings, I think Leon Bailey, if he's fit, if he's able in training to get up to speed with the way the team plays in terms of getting used to the rest of his teammates, I think he has to start. That just extra bit of quality, technical abilities from what we had before. And we'll see how he gets on. It may take a little bit of time to get used to it. He may hit the ground running, but I think you've got to give him a go in terms of where he's come from, where we're bringing him in. And I think the third player you're playing behind the centre forward, I think is, you could say, slightly controversial, because you could say he should be playing up front. And he was playing up front last year. But in terms of the characteristics he had last year, it was running, never giving up, charging down, following up, and he did score a few goals, to be fair, because he's our top scorer. I play Watkins on that left, kind of coming in, and I don't know whether Watkins is going to like playing there or not. I mean, I haven't been able to ask him, unfortunately. But
it's just not good enough.
No, in terms of those characteristics, in terms of it seems a bit strange in terms of somebody who scored like 14 goals in the league saying they're not a natural goal scorer. And I think, it's not, he's a natural goal scorer, but different teams have that attacking play coming on the wings. They score plenty of goals. You don't necessarily need to be that guy up front to score all the goals. And I'm not convinced he'd fit in a 2 with who I'd play up front. I mean, be interesting to find out. And I know you talked in terms of the pre-season game, they did play a 2 up front. I think in terms of the shape, you can call it 5 in midfield or a 2 and a 3. I'd like to see how he gets on in terms of cutting in from the left, and we'll come on to in terms of the first few games we're going to play. I think that's a good trial run in terms of testing that particular formation out, which I suppose leaves up front by default. We're definitely playing Davis up front. No, we're not. We're playing Danny Ings up front. You brought somebody in for 25 million last year, the contract, so we're obviously putting big money down. He's not coming to play on the bench. He's got a very good goal scoring record. He's a bit different to what we've had kind of up front. Similar to Bent, we mentioned the comparison before. Get him in the centre of the penalty box. He knows where the net is. Yeah. And we're going to have to play slightly differently, I think, to what we've done previously to play to his strengths. But you have to you don't build your team around him, but, you got somebody who is that threat, then, get him in there, in terms of doing what he needs to get the best out of him. And in terms of a front 4, that is, again, I think that is better than most of the teams in the league.
It's pretty deadly, isn't it? I would go with the same front 4, but I'd do it differently. I'd have 2 wide players and 2 up top. So I'd have Bailey out on the right wing, because that's apparently where he prefers to play. If you listen to his midnight press conference from Jamaica the other day, left-footed, cutting inside, hitting, fizzes straight into those top corners. He likes to shoot from the corners of the box and try and bend them round the keeper. You know, we can then swap over to the other wing. And it's a little bit unfair on Bertie. You know, we may not have been the most consistent of players last year, but there's definitely something about him. He's got some magic in those boots, and that's what you need, isn't it, on the wings? His goal against West Brom away, I still don't know exactly how he hit it to get it to just roll in past such a good goalkeeper. That's the only compliment I'm ever going to give West Brom. I think Emiliano Buendia starts out on the left, or it could be the right with Bailey on the left. And I think we'll find him drifting inside a lot, very much like Jack. Coming inside, laying his passes off, linking up quite well, getting his shots off, and allowing Target to bomb on down the left wing, and then two up front, Ings and Watkins. But I think with that, because Watkins is such an intelligent player, Watkins can then drop into the 10, or Ings can, you know, a bit more of a Sheringham, or Watkins can pull out to the left wing with Buendia in the centre and Bailey on the right and cause problems from there. But the one thing it gives us is it gives us that Angel danger in the air as well, because Watkins is very good in the air. He's a threat there. Danny Ings scores goals with his head as well. He's just a natural finisher, isn't he? You know, if he'd have been at any club other than Southampton, if he could have replicated that form for Liverpool, you'd probably have more of a conundrum as to who starts up front for England out of him and Kane. I think Danny Ings and Watkins up front together, getting you those 15 to 20 a season, especially with Bailey and Buendia banging crosses over, and Cash and Target being able to whip balls into the box. Potentially Ashley Young if he's playing further forward. We've got the makings of a deadly duo there that we haven't seen for a long time down at Villa Park. You've also got El Ghazi, who's shown he can score goals, can step up to the plate when it matters. And Wesley and Davis, they're just not quite good enough, but it might suit them playing in a two up front if they're more of a hold the ball up, nod it down for someone else to score the goals, and especially if you've got Watkins and Ings who can do that. It's the makings of a good team, but we probably do need a better third choice. But looking at that team as a whole and thinking, we haven't even mentioned Conor Hourihane as a central midfield option. He probably isn't going to get a look in, but if you've now got a set piece specialist, he could be quite deadly there. And looking at right back, okay, Gilbert, we both like him, but if it doesn't work out for him, Kane Kessler's out on loan at the moment and he's highly rated, and you've got Louis Barry as well to come back, and we've forgotten Vilagence Bides and Chukwuemeka, who both had vital minutes at the end of last season. All right, he might have only been 2 minutes away at Tottenham in one game for Chukwuemeka, but then he had 20 or 30 minutes against Chelsea, a team that went on to win the Champions League at home. It's looking bright for us.
Yeah, I think in terms of, even though the big departure has been attacking wise, I do think the strongest area of the squad is in the attacking areas rather than in defence. And I think, we got young players, we got, you mentioned in terms of Traore, players, if they're kind of your subs kind of coming on, I think we're in a good place, in terms of, ideally, I think you're looking at another centre forward, definitely, I think, for that third choice kind of role. But if we can find a system to play Ings and Watkins up front, and they're both getting double figures, it's going to be a good season for us, I think, definitely.
I think so. And you mentioned looking forward to the first 3 games of the season. Watford away, Newcastle at home, Brentford at home. Okay, it's probably a bit naive because 2 of them have just come up, but you're looking at maximum points there, aren't you, really?
I think if we get maximum points, we're on the way for a good season. It's always a bit of a slight concern playing a newly promoted team, first game of the season, at their place, because the cliches about they're up for it, in terms of... Also the history, in terms of we helped relegate them kind of last time. And I'm sure they'll have Troy Deeney, doing the pre-match warm-up, the players' anthems, kind of everything's going to be, do it for Troy, kind of all that. And you don't quite know what you're going to get from this Watford team, because they were close to staying up last time around, shall we say. Promoted fairly comfortably.
Yeah.
I can't really think of them buying too many players in terms of the summer, in terms of wow kind of signings. But they're a decent team anyway. So a tricky opening game. If we can navigate that, 2 home games on the bounce, Newcastle at home. They really like us, don't they? Kind of Newcastle. So a great way to open, be the first game with, a full house for how long, and we'll give Steve Bruce a good welcome, no doubt. And Newcastle have got their own issues going on. I don't think they've brought anybody at all, really, in terms of the summer, and they are not really looking forward to the season too much, I don't think, Newcastle fans, which is opposite to us. And then you got Brentford at home. Who knows how Brentford are going to go. I would say their first half of the season probably be better than the second half of the season. They're going to catch some teams by surprise. Hopefully not us in terms of that game. So you mentioned 9 points out of 9. If we were in our ruthless clinical best, then you would expect 9. I'd say if we get 7, I think we've done pretty well. If we've got 2, I think things have got a bit wrong, because in terms of an opening to the season, when you're looking to find your feet, new players coming in, players leaving, you're not going to get better than that in terms of the first 3 games.
I agree. I think 7 points, I'll be happy with 7 points. Watford, I think having 2 newly promoted teams, and if someone has said to you one of those has to be Brentford, you want Brentford to be the second game, because Watford and Norwich, you probably know what to expect from them. And I'm sure that, Dino's had the right people watching Brentford for a while now, and it just so happens to be quite fortunate that he came from there, so he probably has got that vested interest in them anyway. But Watford, as you say, they haven't really done much transfer-wise. They've got Ismaila Sarr, who's probably their key danger man. Gerard Deulofeu, I can't remember whether he left permanently or whether it was just on loan previously to go to Udinese. Either way, Sarr's that key one. Deeney will be up for a fight, but Mings should have him in his pocket, really, if they do start him. Will Hughes, not a bad player, a player we've even been linked with, and Ben Foster's a very good goalkeeper. He'd probably be a number 1 for most Premier League teams, but whilst Watford isn't always a happy hunting ground, and I can only really remember the 1-0 win where Mark Delaney scored that cracking volley, and I only remember that because I was there. I don't really remember many other wins down there. I still think we've got enough to beat them, especially with Danny Ings up front. And then you've got Newcastle at home, and you'd expect a nice 2-0 win there. Callum Wilson, very good striker, did well for him. Alan St Maximin, another good player for them, but we should be able to combat them. And with their defenders and their midfield, we should overpower them. Danny Ings again, I'd be very comfortable. We'll bag a goal and lead you on to Brentford. At least we'll have been able to see them play 2 games. We'll have been able to see them against Arsenal, and I imagine that game will probably be quite reminiscent to the Liverpool-Leeds game from the first game last year.
I think they'll beat Arsenal. To be honest, I think they do.
I think they could beat them. I can't remember who they've got second game, but I think it gives us enough time to try and work them out. And I know they did us in the Championship, but this is a different league and this is a different Villa now. So, again, who would you fancy in a head-to-head battle, a new to the Premier League Simon Ajer from Celtic, or the proven Danny Ings. I mean, I'm pinning a lot on Danny Ings. You know, I'm going to get a tattoo of him. It would appear by the end of the week, the way things are going. But I'd be quite comfortable that we'll beat Brentford, and I think that will be the hardest of the 3 games. But we'll beat them.
I think they made some good signings, Brentford, to be fair. And I think they'll be a decent opposition. I mean, they've got Palace away after Arsenal at home. And that's not a bad game for Brentford either, you know, in terms of what's going on with Palace.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? I mean, you know, without wanting to talk too much about a different claret and blue team, I'd be quite excited to be a Palace fan at the moment. It's either going to work out really well for him, or they are going to have another Frank de Boer moment.
I think that is for Palace fans. They must be thinking, it can't be worse than the ball. Kind of base what happened last time. He only had 5 games and he was cut very quickly.
I doubt Patrick Vieira's going to go nutmegging Wilfred Zaha in training, though.
That'd be awesome.
Subbing himself on in matches for Milivojevic. Right, mate, get off.
Yeah,
taking it from here.
Well, that's when you know things have gone wrong at Palace. If that kind of happens. But, as you said, a decent opening for Villa. Possibility to get points on the board early on. And it's all about getting, you know, momentum to counteract some of the potential negative feeling that'll be around the club looking from outside. We've kind of danced about it, mentioned him in passing during the course of the podcast. But I'd say it's probably only fitting, really, for somebody who's been such a big part of Villa over the last few years. In a literal sense, he's why we're in the Premier League talking about this season coming up. You may have heard Jack Grealish has left Villa. A little bit of money we got in. What are your feelings? Firstly, in terms of Grealish going, but also in terms of Grealish at Villa. You kind of that legacy, that overall kind of what he contributed to the club.
You know, there's no denying that Jack Grealish is Villa through and through, and I've hated him this week, especially thinking, this is your club, this is your city, this is the team you love. And having a number 10 shirt for Man City is the greatest day of your year. So, mate, it should be. Other days that you've had for us, it's been the best day of your year. And just thinking, how can you go and be so happy to dream come true and that? But I think, and then I convinced myself, well, actually, there was a picture of him in a Real Madrid kit once that some fan had done. He was like, oh, that's the dream. And now you think, well, you've never liked the Villa. It's not true. It's because I'm hurt. You know, he's been a phenomenal talent for us. He'll go down in Villa history as the player that he was for us, how big of a player he was for us. And we'll talk about him for a long time. He will be, he's on that Barry Milner young type of level in regards to, yeah, they've gone, but you secretly hope that one day he'll come back. You don't want to see him at Everton in 2 years' time because he's hardly played for City. I do want him to do really well. I wish him all the best of luck. I hope that England build their team around him as well. I hope he goes on to win all the trophies that he deserves at Man City, you know. And I've been thinking a lot this week as to, so what is his legacy at the Villa? Is he a legend or is he just a cult hero? And I spoke to my stepdad, who's a very big Villa fan, earlier this week, and we were talking about, you know, the 81, 82 teams, they're legends. Every single one of them are, you know. The last real legends that we had is probably your Ian Taylor's, who was Villa through and through, won the League Cup with them and got them into the top 4, scored goals on those European nights against Atletico Madrid. Even your Dwight Yorks, those sort of players are your legends because they won something with the club and they helped them achieve things. And I was thinking, Grealish has never done that. And Grealish hasn't done that for us. Jack Grealish, I need to give myself a slap. Jack Grealish has done that. He helped win us promotion. He was the catalyst behind it. He had to be the captain when he came back to spur us on. he beat Birmingham City after being levelled out of nowhere. He scored that wonder goal against Derby that really lifted us. Before that, he helped us win. He helped us win promotion. He was the main reason we stayed up the last year when other players were struggling for form. You gave him the ball and you felt like we'd score. It was touching that he got that goal that kept us up against West Ham. He kept us up against West Ham with that goal. There's no two ways about it. And then last year we did struggle without him. Okay, we beat Leeds away, which is no small feat really, you know. The other game was, the 3-1 against Fulham. I think you'd have expected us to beat them anyway. But he was a player, and the fact that he can evoke so much emotion from everybody, not just in Birmingham, not just in Manchester either, but in England. Anyone who follows the Premier League just goes to show what a big player he was. He was on that sort of level of Barry, Milner, Young. In my opinion, they weren't legends at the Villa. They were cult heroes, you know, very big players, but they didn't achieve what he did really in regards. Yes, they finished in the top 6 regularly, and we haven't done that since they've left, but he got us back where we belong, in the upper league in England. You know, he gave us dreams again. I think we all lived vicariously through him as well. And who's the next one? Who's going to come along? Is it Louis Barry? Is that the hope? Is it Carney Chukwuemeka? They may never do it. He did. He's a legend in my eyes. You've broke my heart, Jack. You really have. And I'm laughing at your expense that you didn't win the game against Leicester City, and I loved the memes about how it's made Villa fans years, you know, especially after what you said. But I'll still wear my socks down low when I'm playing football. I still wish I had your hair. You've overtaken Ian Taylor for me, and Ian Taylor was my Villa hero, and Gareth Barry was. But Jack Grealish, Mr. Aston Villa, you know, he, as I say, I've got a broken heart, but what a player he was for us.
I'll say my personal view, in terms of the player with the most natural ability that I've seen in my lifetime at Villa, Grealish. There's no real comparison. And the amount of games, it almost became ordinary that he would be able to take a game by the scruff of the neck. Nobody would get anywhere near him, and he'd be able to almost do what he liked kind of with the ball.
Yeah.
And we've had very few players, if at all really, in our lifetime who've been able to do that. And it wasn't a Premier League game, and you know, the opposition weren't exactly the best. I remember we went to see a pre-season game where we played Kidderminster a few years ago. It wasn't our first choice. Obviously, we were playing Kidderminster. I've never seen a player just absolutely destroy an opposition the way I did. And I know it was only Kidderminster, but he hadn't done that week in, week out for Villa. Only got better from there. He kept us up, as you said. I remember in terms of, you remember moments as a fan, you remember games as a fan. I remember where I was when Grealish hit it in. I remember the reaction. I remember the look of terror my other half gave me when I was jumping up and down after Grealish had scored. But, you know, they're kind of the memories you have as fans. And especially in terms of, you know, we're obviously an historical team. It had a lot of historical success. We haven't won very much since we've been supporting Villa. So you don't judge success, failure necessarily by trophies. You judge it by those moments, and Grealish has been at the centre of moments, the best moments for Villa over the last few years, and he is irreplaceable. And you mentioned in terms of the feeling, I haven't really felt sad in terms of players leaving Villa over the last, however long we've been watching them. Anger sometimes, in terms of certain promises being made by players 2 days before they've gone to join somebody else.
Yeah.
It was sadness in terms of Grealish. It was a resignation. It was an acceptance, in terms of this was going to happen. Obviously, especially we've seen over the last 18 months, there's a lot more important things than football in life. But it was kind of the closest to one of those kind of real emotional kind of moments. Like, he's gone. It's over. He's not coming back. He may come back later on in the career, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it is the real start of a new era. And, we talked about in terms of the preview, we're hoping we got a good team, it's going to go well. But we're not entirely sure how it's going to go. And we got to look forward in hope rather, and expectation as well. We'll see how we get on. And speaking of looking forward in hope and expectation, that brings us to the end of this episode. And you'll be looking forward in expectation to the next episode when we're back, hopefully talking about the 9 points we've got from the first 3 games. And also in terms of all things Villa, what's happened since we've been here. Hopefully some new signings. Hopefully we're not talking about Grealish, because we've got 3 or 4 quality players in there. And it's like, Jack who? In terms of that. I suspect it may not be quite that easy. But we'll be back soon with more Villa content for you to listen to. Thanks for listening. Speak to you soon.
I'm going to leave you with... I'm just going to ask you one last question though, right? I'm really sorry to butt in then. And I just one other thing about Grealish. It's that painful. I think when we look at Grealish, the other thing is that we've had that sense of pride, haven't we, as to how good he was. And it brings us nicely onto England in some ways, where we started the podcast. In regards to, we wanted him to play because we knew what he could do. And slowly, the rest of the nation felt the same way about him, wanting him to play. You saw the tweets, you saw the Facebook posts, you heard the fans chanting his name in the stadiums, "We want Jack, we want Jack." You've got pride there, and that's why it hurts. But the one last thing, if we can sign one player before the end of August, realistic, who is he? And then I'll let you do your outro again.
Same probably can't say Jack Grealish, can we? To sign him back. In terms of realistic players who we could bring in, he's irreplaceable. I don't think you can bring somebody in to do the same as he does. We've been linked with Ward-Prowse, with Darsgaard, the Danish player who scored in the semi-final against England. I'd take either of them. I think, in terms of, we're not going to be the same again as we were, but 2 solid central midfield players, improving the squad, improving that depth. I think that'd be maybe a nice legacy is a bit much. But, yeah, in terms of, you kind of 1 step back, 2 steps forward, kind of, let's sign both of them. We got 100 million burning a hole in the pocket. Let's get both.
Yeah. I agree with Ward-Prowse. James Ward-Prowse is an exciting signing. Is he up there? Really sorry again. He's obviously my new Grealish. Is he up there with the level of excitement as Danny Ings? Maybe not, but maybe he is. Messi's on a free, as well. But yeah, James Ward-Prowse. Anyway, sorry. I'll pass it back over to you to do your second outro.
I'll say Messi's already taken a pay cut once, so we're getting a bit more.
We've got 100 million that we can throw at him.
Yeah, that could get us a couple of weeks of Messi. You get top 4 by Christmas, and then we hang on to the second half when he goes to play in America. But in terms of, we're coming to the end of the podcast. Hopefully, you're not going to leave halfway through the season, because we're going to be here throughout the rest of the season, talking about Villa, talking about how we're getting on, the highs, hopefully not too many lows, but we'll see who we do buy, and hopefully we will be onwards and upwards. We're back in the stadium, full crowds, all behind the team. We'll speak to you again soon, but in the meantime, up the Villa.